welcome back. Exes and T podcast fans. Hey guys, what's up? Good to see you guys again. Hopefully you're looking at me. If not, hey, hope to hear your guys' opinion on my voice again. Hey, just kidding. So, anyways, you guys, I'm really excited because we're back at it again and we are going to be talking about our favorite topic, worldwide dream builders and Amway. With that being said, you guys, let's give out the disclaimer that we do every single time because I'm not trying to get sued. Now, I am going to be speaking about these organizations. I do have a lovely guest who will be with us who will also be speaking on these organizations. Hear me out. We are not here to defame anybody, okay? Anybody whose names we talk about have been changed, actually. My goal is not defame Amway or Worldwide Dream Builders or any of the various LOAs that we talk about or might come up because we're here to just tell a story. I think that spreading the message is so much more important. And again, if you're an adult and you want to join these organizations, please do. I would just say, hey, listen to some of these stories. They might sway your opinion one way or the other. You're an adult. You can do whatever you want. So don't sue me. Okay. Good to go. So, you guys, we have had this person on the podcast. She's a frequenter here. She's a regular. She is one of the people that you guys always rave about. Say she and her husband, their episode is one of your guys' absolute favorites. So, you guys, I have here to talk with us. We have Hope. Welcome, Hope.
Hello, hello. Always happy to be here.
We love having you here. We really do. I think that you and Fisher add a lot of different perspective, and you guys have come on to talk about so many different things. And this topic you wanted to come on and talk about. So, what is it that brings you here with us?
I recently had a little baby, which was super fun. I think everybody knew I was pregnant. Yes, round of applause. Yay, me. She'll be 1 month tomorrow. So this is my first postpartum out of Worldwide, which has been super fun in comparison to my postpartum in Worldwide. So I sent Danny a message and I said, yo, we should probably talk about this because we both experienced postpartum in and out of Worldwide. And there is significant differences here. So I just want to yap about that for a while. I could talk forever. So yeah.
Yeah,
There's nothing
totally.
significant I want to
It kind of
talk
brings it
about,
full
but
circle.
yeah.
It's we talked about pregnancy in and outside of Amway, and we talked about the vast differences that come with being a part of this organization versus not being a part of this organization. What I think is interesting is, you're right. We both had the experiences inside and out, which is interesting because mine came before, and I like the fact that you have in and then out, like after the fact is out, which is really cool because you can kind of see those differences right in front of you. I
Yeah.
have to think back like years before. I'm like, fuck, this was like almost 12 years ago that I was postpartum after the fact. But looking back at postpartum in Worldwide is a fucking nightmare for women.
Yeah. Big difference
It's not
there.
fun.
Yeah, like everything about it too, because like we both had C-sections, so like that is obviously something that was very different in and out of Worldwide because I felt like I had to
Yes.
bounce back super quick the first time.
Yeah.
I had my son in December of 2019 and I went to my first board plan in January. I want to say he wasn't even a month yet. So like it'd be the same as my daughter going to like a babysitter's right now, which like kind of susses me out. Like I don't want her to be watched. I didn't want my son to be watched. So I had to bring him to a
Yeah.
babysitter. It was actually dream night. That was my first function back, which was in January. Yeah, 2020. And I went dropped him off at my mother-in-law's. Very nerve-wracking. Dropping him off for the first time. Uh, but I felt like I had to. Like I felt like I had to be this
Yeah.
big businesswoman who was like easily separated from her children, and I had to go back and focus on my business, and then eventually as time went on I would be able to focus more on my children because I wouldn't be employed and I wouldn't have to put so much effort into the business. But that initial
Yeah.
like first meeting back, like I remember being like, this is how I'm supposed to feel, but I don't feel that way. Like I went out for drinks with my
Yeah.
friends last week and I was like, it was like an hour and I was like, I gotta go. Like I'm going back home. Like I was like, I had one beer and I was like, I gotta skedaddle. I gotta get back home to my daughter. I do not want to be separated from her. But with my
Yeah.
son, I was gone like a while, like 4 or 5 hours. And it was like a big jump. And I felt like I should feel this way. I should be like a business lady. It was wild.
Which is not fair because what's funny and the irony behind that kind of that concept, right, of putting your child with a babysitter is how they speak so poorly about putting your kid in childcare altogether. Like there's the fear tactics with
Yeah.
my upline, who I know Nandi and I talked about. We share this upline. It's the bald guy and his wife. They
Hmm.
are above the club owner and his wife, right? So if you know, you know. She was the biggest fearmonger when it came to childcare. She would fabricate, and I say fabricate allegedly because my kid, I interviewed many and he went to many different childcares because our situations changed because of worldwide.
Yeah.
And every application that I've seen, I have never once seen the question, if your child walks for the first time, do you want us to record it or tell you, or do you want us to pretend that they didn't do it and when you see it, it's the first time? Like that is the most bullshit thing I've ever heard. But when I was there, I was like, oh my God, like that's scary, even though I had a kid in childcare and knew damn well that that wasn't real. But you're talking about a 1-month-old child. I mean, hell, okay, for you, it sounds like a month. Mine was a week, a week, weeks when my son was watched. And unfortunately, again, I had to sacrifice that my child be watched and it was by a family
Mhm.
member. But my child would have probably been safer with somebody who wasn't my family because it was my narcissistic mother watching them. And that was the unfortunate, like, I have to weigh out the business is more important. And as long as this person's willing to watch my kid for free, it doesn't matter, which really sucks. But you're looking at this little baby that you don't even want to be away from because, I mean, they're telling us, oh, you don't want to be away from your kids, but they're pulling us away from our children
Mhm.
quite literally almost out of the womb.
Yeah. And you think, yeah, because they talk like I remember Nolan and Rianne would talk about how they would go and share the plan at after 8 o'clock because it didn't matter because their kids were in bed.
Yep.
Um, and Rianne, when she was freshly postpartum, she wouldn't come to plans, and it would just be Nolan. Um, and I remember being like, "Oh, so there was like this time where you didn't have to come and watch your husband speak." Like I was like, "Okay, like I can get on board with this." So like I think we missed like one one board plan when I was freshly postpartum, but like Fisher was a huge help too, which is something that like not a lot of women get from their spouse is help from their counterpart.
Yeah.
Um but Fisher helped me a lot, so he was also just as sleep deprived as I was. So the thought of going to a board plan together wasn't like ideal to us. So like we missed one and that was on like December 19th. My son was born on the 15th. So it was like we missed one board plan. We didn't even know what day it was at this point. Like we are like, I don't know what's happening right now. I
Yeah.
like the sun goes up and down. Like that's all I know. Like I'm just sleeping when I can. So we missed that one. And then when we felt like kind of okay, we went back to dream night. This was also our first virtual function, so it wasn't like actual dream night. It was like the
Yeah.
first dream night. I don't think you were in yet. This was January 2020, or you left, so it was
Yeah, I
January
was
20.
gone.
Yeah, so this I was kind of like checked out, but we did like a watch party. So this was like a virtual function that they were trying out because they thought like dream night was kind of a waste of time, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, they didn't take that function seriously.
no, not at all. So they got all the diamonds in a room and then like had like little like clips, like 5 minute clips of them like bragging basically about their life.
Yeah.
And then we had like our platinum ship come to like one house and we watched it. And that was like our first kind of look. And then no, okay, sorry. I also went to another board plan, not just that one. I went to two board plans, but because these were my last two before I like absolutely quit. So the second one I remember because I tried on my outfit that I would wear to board plans, and it didn't fit. I was like really mad because I was like
Oh,
freshly postpartum, and I was like, why does this outfit not fit me anymore? I was like
yeah.
super upset. But that's also another thing about Worldwide is they expect you to like
Yep.
bounce back physically as well super fast,
Yeah.
which was like a big
Absolutely.
thing with having a C-section was I couldn't like, jump out and like I went to a board plan a month postpartum and I'm technically not supposed to do anything for 6 weeks. So
Yeah.
like I was out doing this stuff because I felt like I had to do this stuff. I felt like I had to go prospect. And if I wasn't and I was just laying on the couch recovering, like I wasn't being a good business
Productive.
partner. Yeah, like
Yeah.
this time at least, like I've been resting more effectively, like to the point where I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of the house. Like I feel like I have to get out of the house because I'm resting so
Yeah.
much. And Fisher again has been a huge help. Um, so like I'm resting way more this time than I was when I was in Worldwide. But
Yeah.
again, they shame rest. They don't like us napping. And they don't treat postpartum like it's a different stage of our lives, even though it's a
Nope.
major change. Like,
Yeah.
same.
Absolutely. It's not fair. But
Yeah.
and I think we kind of touched on this a little bit when we talked about, pregnancy and Worldwide, and I feel like we could also make, like, an entire episode just based on this one topic, but it's the sexualization of women and how they
Yes.
heavily they whether they want to admit it or not, they're pushing physical appearances of women. I mean, if you look at the diamonds, right, they're all these fit, very attractive women who I'm sure a lot of them have had plastic surgery. At least I think the crown's
Oh,
wife
yeah.
allegedly may have. And it's like they're pushing this unrealistic standard onto us basic ass people. And not only are we exposed to that our entire time. But imagine going through that as a woman in your postpartum, especially when these people are talking about giving natural births and how they were able to give home births, like the actual privilege that these people are offering. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand that there's a difference with countries and how it might be a little bit more accessible for you guys to have home births than it is here. I never really looked into it.
Mm.
But that being said, though, the diamonds are still, they have this level of privilege that we don't get to have. And that's for something as simple as postpartum. However, they also set the precedent by doing stupid shit. Like, and I know Dawn and Mary are guilty of this, where they have a child and they're on stage the like damn near the next day or the
Yeah.
day before they pop, right? Like, there is no time for us to rest. It is the expectation that we give this child out to the world and then literally minutes later we're dropping the message. Like, there's absolutely no time to rest. I mean, I've told this story many times where my upline coached me when to have my baby so that way I could go to a John Maxwell spring leadership. Now I kind of get the timeline a little bit mixed up. I think I've said in the past that it was like that weekend, but I think it was the following weekend. Either way, it was less than 2 weeks after my child was born. And I had a C-section, as you mentioned, Hope, that I didn't have this privilege of getting to just sit down. I mean, yes, I worked from home. I got 2 weeks of maternity leave because I was a part-time employee. Y'all US people know what I'm talking about. Canadians feel sorry for us. So, but not only did I have such a short period of time being home to actually recover because of my job, I now have Worldwide breathing down my fucking throat, saying
Mhm.
like, or breathing down my neck, whatever. And they're saying like, hey, so what are you doing? You know, when I was pregnant, I
Yeah.
was heavily praised for being pregnant and doing all the things like she's pregnant, what's your excuse?
Mhm.
And then it was she just had a baby, what's your excuse? And then the moment I stopped performing, my name was never mentioned anymore. Any accolades I got were like literally ripped out from underneath me. And it's that when that happens, that's what puts pressure on us to feel like, oh shit, I need to work harder, despite the fact that my body was just ripped open. Whether you give birth naturally or you have a C-section, your body is fucking exposed and you have to recover from that.
Yeah,
There's
like
no such thing in
massively.
worldwide.
There was like something I learned through a birthing class I was doing recently called the 5-5-5 rule, where it's like 5 days in the bed, 5 days beside the bed, 5 days on the bed. Like it's something like that where they teach this for being postpartum is you have like a solid 15 days where you don't do anything. Like you cannot do
Yeah.
anything. Like people bring you the baby, they bring you food. Um, but we also used to have like a bigger village than we have now. Like mothers used to have like grandmothers coming in, and I had
Yeah.
one family that actually lived in the house. This isn't just a spouse because like Fisher was tired too, so somebody should be taking care of him as well. It's a bigger village than that. So
Yeah.
you're very lucky to live in Arizona because during the time my daughter was born, um, it was 40 below here, which is the same in Celsius as Fahrenheit. So it's exactly same temperature as 40 below. And
No.
like when we were in the hospital, we had to get like jumper cables and like our pipes froze, so like our sink backed up and like it was brutal, but like it's we had people we could call on, like our
Yeah.
both me and Fisher's mom live in the same town that we do here in Alberta. So we could call on them, but it was hard because,
Yeah.
it's 40 below. So I'm going to call, my mother to come bring me groceries or bring me formula, like whatever I need. Like that stuff's hard and adapting to that
Yeah.
uh, change in society that has happened pretty recently where we don't live with our extended family, we only live with our immediate family. Like there's some
Yeah.
things that just don't translate as well. Like, and you have these people who are in worldwide who are very privileged and like ultra rich who can hire night nurses or like nannies and
Yeah.
like whatever they need to do in their postpartum stage to get them to bounce back super fast. Like,
Yeah.
and they don't acknowledge like that this is a privileged thing. Is kind of
Yeah.
like you don't think about these things when you think about like postpartum. You think about it as it's very like black and white, and it's not like a woman is postpartum so she should be feeling this way, and it doesn't work like that. It's like a fingerprint, and we all are adapting to being postpartum very differently. And especially when
Yeah.
again it comes to like these cesareans and the vaginal births, is there's a whole different spectrum on how we're supposed to be healing. And for us,
Yeah.
I don't know, in our healthcare system it's 6 weeks before you get the green light to do anything. You're not
Yeah.
allowed to
Here too.
lift anything, or yeah, so it's like even with a vaginal birth, like I think it's still like 6 weeks that they tell you like you can't um like have sex or like exercise or like these
Yeah.
basic things that you're not supposed to be doing postpartum. um but again, this stuff is like a fingerprint, and we should be treating these women as individuals and not as like a statistic, which is what
Yeah.
Worldwide was doing. They were going, well, you're a postpartum woman, and I've known postpartum women, this is how they behaved. And Mary could go on stage right after or being 42 weeks pregnant, because I went to that open
Right.
where she was 42 weeks, and I'll never forget it because I was like,
God.
isn't this supposed to be bad? Like, aren't you supposed to be induced at this point? Like, like what's going on?
Right.
But we saw, like, I remember seeing all of that, and my body didn't behave that way. And, my labor didn't behave the way that they told me it was going to be. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of shame that came with that. And this
Yep.
time, like, there was so much freedom because I had the agency of my own decision making, which I didn't
Yeah.
have last time.
Right, and you got to explore every option that you had. There was and then we talked about that too when we talked about just being pregnant, like, there's so many different types of conversations that we can't have with our upline. Last time you talked about abortion, that's one that we can't have. One
Mm,
now that we talk about postpartum is breastfeeding. Like,
yeah,
this topic is so controversial with Worldwide because there is such an emphasis on breastfeeding, and
yeah,
societally speaking, I feel like it's pretty acceptable either way. Like, as long as your child's
yeah,
being fed, it doesn't matter. With Worldwide, if your birthing experience, if your postpartum isn't the exact same as your privileged ass upline, there's a lot of like snide remarks that are being said, like, oh, you're not breastfeeding, or like, oh, my kid is X, Y, and Z age, and I'm still I have so
Mm,
much milk. I don't know what to do with it. And they say these things in our faces when we're like talking and like almost crying through our. I know I was crying through my struggle of even breastfeeding because I
yeah,
wanted to so desperately with my second child because I knew I was never going to have any other kids. Like I knew deep down I was
yeah,
not going to have any more.
yeah,
And I really wanted this whole experience to be what I was seeing on stage, especially when it comes to the Canadian leaders and the guy who
yeah,
talks really fast and his wife. Like just the amount of
yeah,
emphasis that they're putting on getting pregnant. And you kind of looked at it as this like magical thing. I fucking hated being pregnant the first
yeah,
time. I don't know why my dumbass went and did it again. Lord knows I love my kid. But at the same time, I didn't want to do it again. Pregnancy was gross to me. I didn't feel like I loved it. I didn't feel like I was glowing. I felt like there was an alien inside of me and it was uncomfortable when it kicked
yeah,
me. But I also now know as an adult who has been diagnosed, I have ADHD, which means it comes with
yeah,
the various amounts of, sensory issues. But
yeah.
there was none of that talk on stage. There was no blunt and honest, like, dude, this fucking sucks sometimes. Nobody told me that breastfeeding is also very painful and hard to do.
That's
Nobody told me
toxic
that,
positivity, though. Like, that's the whole, like, avenue of being like, you can't be negative, so you can't complain about
which is
being
stupid.
pregnant. It fucking sucks. Like, this whole, it sucks. I just finished doing it. And I didn't tell you this before. I don't know if I told you this at all, actually. Is I got a tubal ligation when I had my C-section. So, like, I literally can't have kids anymore. Yeah. So that
Yay.
was like a
Congrats.
very freeing moment for me, was being like, I am officially not fertile anymore. I'm never gonna have any children. Um,
Yeah.
so that, yeah, that very freeing. But you're not allowed to be negative like that. Like, if I was to like be in World War, that tubal ligation would have had to go through my upline. Like, I would have had to be like, what do you think about me getting my tubes tied? And it'd be like,
I always said no.
no, like, see, the thing is like, I've always heard that, like, when you have your children, you'll know when your heart is full and you're done. But I felt that with my son. Like, I was like,
I did too.
I'm done.
I was like,
Like, I
I'm
was
done.
like, I'm good. Like, my heart is full. I feel fulfilled by just having my son. And then I got pregnant and I had my daughter, and I look at her and I'm like, I don't know where you've been my whole life. I love you so much, but I'm really done. I never want to do this again. And I'm okay with saying I never want to do this again.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a very freeing thing to know that I will never be pregnant ever again in my entire life.
Absolutely.
It sounds, like, kinda messed up to say, because, like, I know there's people that struggle with fertility, and I know there was people in
Yeah, of
Roma that
course.
struggled with fertility too. So even when
Yeah.
I talked about this in the pregnancy episode also, but when I had these, like, thoughts of, like, "Pregnancy sucks, I don't wanna do this, like, multiple times, like, I'm kinda good with having 1 kid, this is hard." I didn't really
Yeah.
have anybody I could talk to about it, because Rianne has 5 kids, I think, and my main
Yeah.
upline had 1 through IVF. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't really have anybody I could talk to and be like, "This sucks. Are we gonna talk about the fact that this sucks? Or are we just gonna, like, put on a smiling face and be like, everything is awesome. Like, I love this."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's what sucks about it is that you're right. We can't talk negatively about things and it sucks that that's the impression that they're giving to all these women that they're now encouraging to have kids. Just for the record, I also had a tubal, not with my C-section, but after the fact because my upline was always like, "You never know if you might want." No, fuck that. I don't want more. I didn't
yeah,
want my
no,
second one. No offense.
yeah.
I didn't want to be pregnant a second time, but I have him. I love him. I adore him. Like he's amazing. That being said, though, there's not enough honesty coming from upline. They're giving this magical show of what their life looks like, and we're just like in awe of what they have. And in all reality, I don't think that their lives are as great as they like to portray. There's so much
We're
divorce happening in like the
human.
diamonds that they don't want to admit. Like exactly, there nobody's life is perfect. Like people
No,
like I fuck up on
exactly.
a regular. Like what, they never have arguments? Oh, that's right. The wives are submissive. They shut up. They don't say nothing. I'm
But
sorry. That's
it
never gonna
like,
fucking be me.
okay, I've talked about this, like, previously before, but you have to do the Myers-Briggs personality test. This is, like, 16
I
different
have.
personality. You have? Okay, what
Yes.
does it
I
say?
don't know my
Sorry.
answer, but I don't remember, but I've
No.
done it. I'll have to take it again
Okay,
and find it. I
you
know I'm
gotta
like
do
an
it again.
extrovert though.
Okay, good. Yeah, me too. But that has like 16 different personalities, which is still not enough to account for 8 billion people in the world. But a
Right.
lot of like I've been saying about there being like people are like fingerprints. Like we have to treat them very like individually. So it's like you can say, "Well, I feel like you would regret getting a tubal." It's like, "Well, you don't know
Yeah.
me as well as I know me, and me wanted
Yeah.
this." So I'm going to go get this because this is how I behave. And we put everybody on a pedestal all the time. Like, I don't know, this is might be a
Yeah.
controversial topic to kind of bring up in this, but like people are going to influencers on social media right now and asking them how they feel about like wars across like the world right now. And they're like, I'm
Yeah.
just a person who makes silly little videos. Why are you taking my advice? And it's like people feel like they can go to all these people about random advice because they have such a wide platform. And this is what we were doing in worldwide is they were like influencing so many people that we were like, well, we have to listen to them.
Yeah.
But it's again, their blanket advice does not fit every individual that's going to be in their business. Like
Yeah.
that's and especially when we were postpartum and like just being a woman in general in worldwide was kind of just like a wild ride because it was like we
Yeah.
were ultra sexualized, we had to heal in a proper way, we had to talk to our husbands a certain way, the look a
Yeah.
certain way, dress a certain way so we didn't trigger everybody. It was like we had to be like a doll, like is what it felt like. We had to just like be
Yes.
like exactly what they wanted us to look like because we were just like arm candy to the actual contributors to the business. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. It's crazy because we're the backbone of the business. Let's be real. Women are quite literally the fucking reason why that business is still running. Because, sure, the men hop on stage with their rings and show their strength and masculinity and a bullshit. But who's the one running their calendar? Their wives are. Who's the one making sure that they have their suits and ties ready, their food, their everything, their kids are taken care of if they have kids. Like I look to Jess. Jess was a fantastic fucking example of a woman who was so fucking disrespected in that business. I still fucking hate Robert. Fuck you, Robert. Every episode I try to say it. But this motherfucker didn't do shit. But because he was a man, he he was respected more despite the fact that she had the calendar. She was the one who made sure that they had everything they needed. She was like our business mom. She had fucking everything in her purse. Like if there's one thing I can say about Jess, if you need it, she fucking has it. She snuck salads into a fucking event once. Like she knows. Oh yeah, she's
I
amazing.
just imagine her
But
with
she
like
got no respect.
lettuce and like
She had like
tomatoes and being
she
like,
had jarred salads. Like she could sneak in shit. She was the best, but like she was doing that, not Robert. Robert wasn't doing anything. And it was same with like almost said their names. It was the same
ooh,
with John and Barbara. Like John would be like, "Okay, go talk to Barbara, get in our calendar." Who's managing the fucking calendar? Barbara is. Then why the fuck is it John and Barbara? Why does the man get the most emphasis? The
yeah,
woman is the one that people are trusting. The woman is the one who's building that business more so than the men. I don't care if the woman is an introvert. The woman is the backbone of the fucking business, and women get no respect. And not only do they emphasize men for everything that they don't fucking do, women are now under the pressure to bounce back after giving birth to a live child. Like you're talking to a live being, okay? Let's not even go down the sad road of the people who do not get to birth a live child. And I know that's a sensitive topic,
yeah,
but there has absolutely happened. We just don't know it. Like,
yeah,
because we're not allowed to. We talked about this where we could be standing at a major function. Somebody could have had a fucking catastrophic event happen and we would never know. And you're
yeah.
still under the expectation to go about your fucking life. Like, there is nothing normal about pregnancy. There is nothing cookie cutter about
No,
postpartum, especially we talked about this before if you're neurodivergent. There is like we don't function the same way that a neurotypical does. Like I, for the life of me, cannot compartmentalize things. I have ADHD. I fucking see everything. And being postpartum and having to do everything else, like it's a lot of things to do because not only did I have to prospect, I had to prospect with a newborn baby. I had to prospect with my newborn baby, my older child. And not only that, I had to know when all the functions were. I had to make sure I had childcare for everybody. And not only that, I have to be a fucking example for all the other people.
Yeah.
That's too much. Way too much. Let
Well,
me rest for 6 fucking weeks.
exactly. And like they had the power of duplication. So it's like if you were to have more downline, would you want them to be slacking off for six
Yes, that's what they
weeks? But
would
they were
say.
like, well, you got to push through because do you want your downline to not do anything for 6 weeks? And it's like, well, no, but like I do want my downline to recover. Like if they need to recover, I want
Yeah.
my downline to be able to do that because I'm not a dick. So I want the people that I care about to have this time. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like if you want to do the power of duplication, you should also be resting because rest is not a reward, it's a requirement. Like for mammals.
Yes.
How often do you see mammals hustling and bustling? Like, I'm sorry, you see friggin' lions in the desert just lounging around. You see gorillas in the zoo doing whatever they want to do because that's what mammals do. We are mammals. We're
Yeah.
not busy bees who live in a little hive who have to hustle every day in order to survive. We don't have
Yeah.
to do that. We require rest as the human beings that we are. And
Yeah.
I don't know where that got twisted, because rest is not a reward. It is an absolute requirement. And it's more of a
Yeah.
requirement when you have an injury. If you are injured
Yep.
during birth, like a cesarean, you require rest. And you know what? You require
Yeah.
sleep. You require 8 hours of sleep. There was a study done saying that how many humans can survive on 6 hours of sleep? It's 0%. Zero. You can't survive
But
on that
nobody
little
died
sleep.
from sleep. No one died from sleep deprivation, they would say. Yes, they do.
That's like very untrue. Like that's a simple Google search
It's, del-
away. Like
it's
that is something
delusional
like
thinking.
see, this is what I mean. Is like we were just taking like advice from people that we shouldn't have been taking advice from. Like people are going to
Yeah.
social media influencers and asking them about wars. Like why are we going to these leaders and asking them how they feel about rest? Like we know how they feel about rest. They're
Yeah.
anomalies. Like they it's not like they're like they Rianne would always praise David Goggins. Do you know who that is? Dave Goggins. He's like
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
superhuman. He's like an anomaly. Like he would do like ice baths and like just go like he was insane. Dave Goggins is insane. Um Impressive as all hell, but
Yeah.
an anomaly of a human being. You can't tell like the other people on the planet that this is the way that humans act when he is an absolute anomaly. Like that like,
Yeah.
anomaly.
And then, and anemone. Anemone. Sorry, that's
Anomaly.
what I thought was finding Nemo. But you're right. Like, no one human is the exact same as another, even twins. You
Yeah.
can't expect somebody with a different body structure or even just environmental
Yeah.
upbringing. There are so many aspects that create a human like this versus a human like me. Let me tell you, I am not signing up for a marathon anytime soon. I am not built for that. But I'm sure this guy probably has, I probably have things that he doesn't have. Maybe that's kids. Maybe that's, I don't know. But either way,
Yeah.
like it could even just be the neurodivergence. I mean, I don't know much about this guy, but there's so many differences between every single human, and they always try to put us in these cookie cutter boxes because, oh, well, I saw one person inspirationally speaking on YouTube, and all of a sudden I
Yeah.
think that everybody's going to be like that. And it's not fair because you're right. We have, like, I think the biggest thing that they would always take from us is rest. And you're right. They would say, earn your
Mhm.
pillow. Like, rest is a
They will sell
necessity.
their
We like,
mattresses. Like they would
yes.
sacrifice their mattresses. Like that's fucked up.
Yep. Yeah, and they'd praise them for it. Kate's would go out, "Hey guys, this Kate's going up to whoever. Like, we just got rid of our mattress. We're not gonna get a new one until we go platinum," or like whatever pin level that they are
Okay,
striving to
have fun,
be.
you hunchback. You're gonna be like literally like this because you don't have a fucking
Yeah,
mattress. Like, sorry, it's kind
yeah.
of
And
mean,
these are all people
but
that they know they're not going platinum. They know damn well who's gonna go platinum and who's not. I mean, do I think that there's probably some selective like chess going on?
who's
Maybe.
driving
But either
depth into
way,
who? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a calculated look at your organization and statistics. 1% of people even go diamond, or less than 1% of people go diamond,
You have a
and less
higher
than
chance of
5%.
hitting a jackpot on a VLT.
Yeah,
Like
and that's in
and
all of
making
Amway. That's not just
any
worldwide.
profit. That's any profit. That's not diamond. That is any profit. That's not just that is hitting a jackpot
Yeah.
on a VLT. Like you're more than likely sitting in a casino every single day hitting that button. You are more likely to be successful. So if you want to go in there and you want to put your $500 a ditto into a VLT, that's a smarter move. It, like
Yeah, and you only have to do it once. You don't have to do it once every fucking month, you know? Like there it's insane to me to look back and like when I look at pregnancy the first time around, like I had a C-section. I was also very young. And like it was my very first time being pregnant, my first
Mhm.
child. All of my circumstances were just not great. And at least I had time to rest. You know, I was basically a single mom since the day my son was born. It has just been me and him. Like he hasn't seen his biological father pretty much ever. And I didn't have support, but I had rest. I had the
Mhm.
ability to stay home, take care of my child, and do what I could to take care of my needs. And when I came home back to when I was in Oregon, I came back to live with my family. I did have that support from my parents. And when I say my parents, I say my dad and my stepmom. None of this,
Mhm.
like nothing goes towards my actual mother. But like, and I think about being in worldwide and I think about my upline and you talked about having a village. My village was a little different. It was still the same people, but
Mhm.
it was different. My dad's the one who brought me food, not my upline. My dad's the one who came and visited me at the hospital 30 minutes away from where he lived on his way home from work. Every day I was in the hospital because he's my dad. And
Yeah.
yet I had the fucking audacity to put my upline above the one person who was actually fucking supportive of me unconditionally, even though I was throwing my money away into this organization. I was broke as fuck. My dad was helping me with bills at some points and he was pissed about it, but he's like, I'm doing this for the kids, not for you. And my dad
Mhm.
made it very, very clear. And when I look back, they would always say things like, well, we'll help you navigate childcare. They didn't help shit. They didn't help us do anything. So not only are we going to these people where there's no checks and balances in the fucking advice that they're giving to us. They have no expertise in anything. Just because you've been pregnant once or twice does not mean you can give advice on pregnancy or postpartum. Like you can give perspective, which is they like to say. Like you can say like, "Oh, like I had a C-section that was like this. I can't guarantee that yours is going to be like this, but I hope that my positive experience gives you hope." Or
Mhm.
that, you know, like you might expect these things to happen, but be prepared for anything. Like there's advice and then there's their advice. They would quite literally tell you what you needed to do, what to prepare for. And none of it was fucking helpful. And then where were they in the middle of the night when your child is crying and you don't know what the fuck to do? They're
Yeah.
not there. Who was
Yeah.
there? Our actual fucking families that they tried to push us away from.
Yeah. And like you touched on breastfeeding too, which kind of goes into like this screaming in the night kind of thing where it was like
Yeah.
with my son, like I tried to breastfeed and due to my own kind of like mental health, I didn't end up wanting to do it. And formula just kind of worked out and then I just pumped conveniently. Um but it was kind of like shameful, I guess. I didn't want anybody to see me put a bottle in his mouth or anything like that. I just
Yeah.
wanted to be like considered this person who breastfed. But this time I had a really bad reaction to breastfeeding. It's something called DMER. It's nasty, even with pumping. Like I had this nasty effect. And I just went straight to formula. I was like, I'm not gonna fuck around. I'm not gonna try to get this figured out. I'm just gonna go straight to formula. I will deal with the
Yeah.
engorgement for a couple of days. My milk will deplete, and I'll be fine. Which is, again, I know it's not the healthier of the two options, like whatever. But this time it was a lot more freeing of a decision. I didn't feel like I was gonna be
Yeah.
shamed for that decision. Because even Rianne, like we would do board plans and she would disappear for over an hour to go and pump. But it was like I didn't have the luxury of doing that because I wasn't a diamond. I wasn't gonna leave a
Yeah.
board plan to go and pump for over an hour. Um, and there was a couple of times that I like almost lost my pumping rhythm because I only did two board plans. But those two board plans I didn't pump at, which meant like I had a 5 hour span where I started to like get engorged and I started to hurt where I was like, I gotta pump, but I don't have an opportunity to pump because I'm not gonna show my boob so some guy doesn't have some weird thoughts about my leaking breast. Like,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
like I didn't have
insane.
this time to go and do that because I didn't have the privilege or I didn't earn it. Like I know I didn't have to earn it, but I wasn't gonna take the bathroom up for an hour. I wasn't gonna bug the host to give me a room to go and pump. But it was like I felt like
Yeah,
I had to be there. Like I had to be
exactly.
present. So it was like I
Yeah,
couldn't just pull out the pump if I needed to. It was a manual pump too. Like I could have covered myself during a board plan, but I just again felt like overly sexualized to the point where I felt like I couldn't do that. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's not fair. The way that they make it sound is that, oh, breastfeeding while you're in the business is so easy. At functions, we offer these rooms. But here's the thing about the pumping rooms. You're talking about having to get up from stadium seating. Okay. We're talking about getting up, being middle of the row, like having to scoot through people. And then not only that, the discomfort of walking postpartum fucking sucks. And then you're
Yeah.
sitting there awkwardly in this really gross room, exposed, even though there were like these really thin curtains. You had the person next to you awkwardly saying something because Lord knows we're in this room, you know? And
Yeah.
I did it one time at a function, and that's how I lost my milk supply, was because I
Yeah.
didn't wanna constantly every couple hours go to the fucking, the room, and it's really sad, but you're right. It's like in order to be able to successfully pump, you have to be at a higher pin level and you have to have earned it. You don't get to be a basic ass person who's not even a fucking eagle, get to be like, "Hey, host, I really need to pump." What about the 3 other pregnant women who are in the room? How
Yeah.
how do you all navigate that? You don't. The diamond is the priority. Maybe the platinums if there's no diamonds in the room. Like, there is no such thing as equal treatment, and that's how a lot of people get into this organization and, like me, lose their milk supply. They lose the privilege to be able to do some of these things that were possible
Yeah.
beforehand. It was the first time I was actually able to pump. Like, I was going to a lactation consultant, I was doing it,
Yeah.
and I was talking like, I could have very easily, like, figured out how to get it back. Like, it was possible, but I also, literally went back to work after that. I didn't have time. I
Yeah.
had to sacrifice and be like, "You know what?" Kinda like you talked about with your mental health. I had to just say, "You know what? It's done. I have to just formula feed for the rest of his
Yeah.
days." And that was I cried. With my oldest, I cried a little bit because there was, some family members who kinda made me feel bad, but our pediatrician was like, "You can't do this, like, your son is projectile vomiting the milk." I changed my diet 3 or 4 times. It was not fucking working. She was like, "Stop. Like, you have to formula feed at this point."
Yeah.
So it was like, I didn't get to the first time, and this child, like, everything was different. Like, I didn't have a partner there who was fighting me like the last time, shaming me. He shamed me too, fuck that guy. But I didn't have that this time. I was all by myself, and I was able to do things the way I wanted to do. And in fact, it was actually shout out to everybody who's married out there. I know y'all are amazing. My ex-husband was a piece of shit. Did he shame me for not being able to breastfeed too? Like, it was all bad, but this time I didn't have that. I
Yeah.
literally got to do everything, but I still wasn't in control despite the fact that it was all me. I had upline telling me I had to be at functions or that I had to go do X, Y, and Z. So I gave up something that I was actually able to physically do for the first time and the
Mhm.
last time because of these people. But yet you have the diamonds on stage like, "Oh, breastfeeding, pumping, pregnancy is magical. Oh, I was just pregnant 2 days ago and look at me now. I'm on stage. What's your excuse?"
Yeah. Again, like this is we're all individuals. Um and the whole breastfeeding and pumping thing, like I don't know how they were so blind to knowing like the masses weren't gonna get that same treatment. Like, I don't know.
They're blind.
It was a lot. Like I remember oh shit. I can't remember what my pseudonym is for my main upline. But she would
Oh,
be
yeah,
like
yeah, I don't remember.
she was like, "Oh, we just like to serve Rianne. Like we just like to serve her." Like she got a comfier chair. They gave her like fruit and like special chips and like
Oh, yeah.
unlimited excess and like all these things and like she wouldn't
Yep.
always take it all, but it was like they gave her like all these things and it was not like frowned upon because it was always like you'll be in this spot one day. You're gonna be here one
Yeah.
day. But Rianne and Mary also didn't have kids till they were Emerald. So they like Dawn and Nolan were both already retired at that point. So
Right.
they had like a lot more hands on deck and they just were like, I don't understand why this is so hard. And it's like, well, you can afford way more than we could afford. Um,
Yeah.
I know that Mary had a C-section with her first. I remember that. And then she had home births with the other four, which was wild. Like
Yeah,
again,
that's dangerous.
like it is very dangerous, but like it's not that dangerous. Like I know
Well,
that like
especially if you're privileged though, like, they could
yeah, like
probably afford to have people there. Like, for me, for
exactly.
example, I there's no way I would risk that. I'd be like, "I don't have enough
Yeah,
people. I can't afford those extra people," like a doula, that costs a lot of
yeah.
money here. I looked into it, I
So
learned what that was. I met somebody who was one. I was like, "Fascinating."
so the weird thing is I don't know how it works in the States, but in like this is again specific to my province because healthcare is all different across Canada. It's just Alberta
Yeah.
specifically. We have doctors like OBGYNs, and then we have midwives, which are like an in between of a doctor and a doula. So midwives are like they like holistic births, but they're also trained medically. Their bags have like level one hospitals in them. Like they can do all your suitors. They carry the vitamin K shot. They carry the erythromycin for the eyes. And then we have doulas, which are like, you know, the more support partner. They're not necessarily like somebody who's medically trained all that well in like
Yeah.
VBACs or like TOLACs types of births. But we do have these in betweens of midwives, which is what I had for both of my pregnancies as a midwife, because this again is a hot take, but I don't necessarily trust doctors because they only know so much and they will only push the medical agenda. So the nice part about having a midwife is you do have the choice of like a home birth and it's free.
Yeah.
So doulas here are $1,200. It's very expensive to have a doula.
Yeah.
But having a midwife is covered by Alberta Healthcare. So those are like the nice in between where you get like the holistic one. So like Mary probably had a midwife or had a doula because like $1,200 is probably chump change to her. But
Yeah,
the
especially with all those memberships.
ooh, um, but having a midwife is free and doing home births is like kind of optional. Like if I with my second birth, I was gonna do a home birth because I wanted to do a VBAC. And I found that with my son being in the hospital, kind of like didn't necessarily prevent me from having a vaginal birth, but it was like very intense. The lighting was intense. The doctors were pushy. The nurses were pushy.
Yeah.
Everything was just kind of like overwhelming. I ended up with a cesarean and I just didn't love the environment that I was in. So I was like, maybe I'll
Yeah.
try a home birth. with my second and see if it like whatever. But from decision to incision was only 30 minutes. So it's not like that, like if I was to have a rupture in my scar, like it's not that major because it would have been like 20 minutes if I was actually in the hospital trying to have a birth. But what happened this time is with my first C-section, my son was almost out. So they had to push him up and out. So it was like they had to push him out of the birth canal and out of the incision. And when that happened, I tore into my one of my arteries in my uterus. So
Oh,
when they
wow.
like pushed him out, yeah, I tore into one of my arteries, which I ended up getting uterine atony. So I had a hemorrhage. I went into shock. It was not fantastic for the
Yeah.
birth that I had, but he still scored a 9 on his APGAR. He was kind of blue, but it wasn't like terribly blue because he still scored a 9. But when I went, I had a consultation with an OBGYN in December of 2023, like very recently. And I went in and I was like, I want to have a home birth. I want to have a vaginal birth. What is your thoughts? You're a doctor, like whatever. And he was like, "Hey, so you had this thing where you like tore into your artery and you
That's
you went
scary.
from like a 0.5% chance of a uterine rupture to a 3% chance of a uterine rupture." And I was like, so I went from 1 in 200 to 1 in 33 of a chance of a
Yo.
uterine rupture. And then I went, yeah, I'm not gonna fuck around. I was like, I already have a son. I'm not risking the life of my son and like or me and my unborn child. I
Yeah.
didn't know the gender at the time. I was like, I'm not risking the lives of us just
Yeah.
to try to experience this vaginal birth, which was a decision that again I got to make, which was very
Yeah.
very important to me because even with my midwife, like I sent her an email and she's a very holistic lady. She loves natural birth. She's not a fan. Sorry. I don't want to put words in her mouth because she's never said this, but I know how she kind of feels about doctors and statistics. Like I know that if I went to her and I was like,
Yeah.
I now have a 3% chance of a uterine rupture instead of a 0.5, like I'm not comfortable with this. She would have been like, well, maybe, like, we could still try. And I nipped it right there. I was like, hey, like, just so you know, it doesn't matter what you say, I'm still gonna have another C-section this time. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's gonna sway this decision. Something about this just
Yeah.
feels right. And
Yeah.
having that other C-section like brought up a little bit of trauma. I don't know if it was like worldwide trauma or just like birth trauma, but it was like
Little both.
definitely like my recovery process having my son was massively difficult because I felt like I had to bounce back super fast. And like a lot of
Yeah.
shame because I couldn't breastfeed, and a lot of shame because I didn't have this vaginal birth that they all told me that I was supposed to have. And
Right.
this time I was like, didn't have a vaginal birth, had a C-section, and I didn't breastfeed again. And
Yeah.
like I don't have postpartum depression this time. Like, and I had that with
Yay.
my son. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it was because I was able to make those decisions on my own or if it was
Yeah.
like I feel like maybe it was because I made those decisions on my own or I don't know. But it definitely
Yeah.
was it was almost hard to like the second time in a way to like make these decisions without somebody telling me what to do. Like I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there's some
It
circumstances
does.
where it's like I want somebody to tell me how I'm supposed to do this. But there was like
Yeah.
a part of me that was like absolutely certain that I was making the right
Yeah.
choice. And I
Yeah.
always second guessed myself when I was postpartum and worldwide because I was like, am I doing this right? Am I, like I was like so much more cautious about like, am I going to be judged for this decision? Like, am I am I doing this right?
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that this time, which again alleviated that kind of depression feeling. which again we can kind of, I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to get into it. We're almost on an hour here, but like they tried to like tell me postpartum depression wasn't real the first time.
Uh, we could go into that a little bit because I do think it's important
Yeah.
because, it's frustrating to look back at the way that they handled mental health as a whole anyways. And kind of going back to like, yeah, there are things that we need perspective on, like buying a car. Hey,
Mhm.
there's this car and this is the price. Like, is this a good idea? Like calling like a
Yeah.
parent or somebody who knows cars. Like I would call my dad and be like, Dad, is this good? He'd be like, nah, that's terrible. Don't do that. Or like, yeah, that's a good deal. Like do that. But when it comes to a medical decision, like I could understand seeking perspective like you did with a doctor. And like you even said, you're like a little skeptical about what the doctor was going to say, but you trusted the doctor in that moment. Either way, you
Yeah.
have the internal instinct to know what was the right decision for you. That's the same thing as well with postpartum depression. Even though there are times when you are in that moment where you don't know, there's still, I feel like, with a lot of people, a part of you where you're like, I know this is postpartum depression. I know what's going like
Mm-hmm.
internally because I had postpartum depression too. I realize now I
Yeah.
didn't know this back then, but I definitely did with my oldest. And I know that I did with my youngest purely because the circumstances in which my child came to be and worldwide, a lot of that all played into it. I was very depressed and I didn't I knew it was postpartum and it was a little bit different because I was still within worldwide and still felt some type of stupid fucking way about mental health. I mean, even still, I don't think it's postpartum at this point anymore, but anybody who has neurodivergent kids, you know the challenges that come with that. And a lot of parents with neurodivergent kids, especially children on the spectrum or various different disabilities that take up and consume most of your time, know that there's burnout. All moms
Mm-hmm.
have burnout. Not to say that all this is just my experience with this particular burnout. I went through a fucking depression where I was like, "Fuck, I'm depressed." Like, severely depressed. It was probably about a 2-week span of time, and I was like, "Holy shit, like, this is bad." It
Yeah.
wasn't like I wanted to, like, off myself or anything by any means, but it was like, I don't feel good. And it finally took being like, "You know what? I think I need to go talk to my doctor, maybe up my antidepressants or
Yeah.
something. I'm doing so much better." But that being said, when I was thinking about these moments, I was thinking about what would it have been like in worldwide if I felt this way, which I did.
Yeah.
What would my upline have said? Go build your business, you'll be fine. Imagine when you get free. Like, oh, your doctor, they don't really know anything. Oh, therapy is a waste of your time. You could be out building your business. We don't medicate here. All of these things are things that Worldwide has fucking said to us. And I know that you went through something when it came to postpartum depression and things that your upline had said.
Yeah, like she I went there in February. So again, I talked about this on the panel. I discovered Sheila Ray Gregoire, Bear Marriage podcast. I went to her and I was like, I gotta meet up with my upline and tell her how horrible love and respect is, and also talk to her about my postpartum depression. So I went there and I was like, hey, love and respect sucks. Like it's bad. This guy's bad. And she was like, mm, she's like, I think this like I don't want to quote like verbatim what she said, but basically she was like,
Sure.
I think this book can help all marriages unless there's abuse. And I was like, I get it. Like I read the book. I know how men are different than women. Like it's okay to say that, but again, I believe there's many varieties of personalities that it isn't just one or the other. And at the
Yeah.
same time, I went to her about my postpartum depression, and I was like, so, so we kind of argued about the Love and Respect book, and then I was like, also, I'm depressed. So,
Just the
uh,
timing.
yeah, it was like, I don't know. I was like, also, I want to talk to you about this because like we're kind of fighting, and then she was like, basically explained, funnily enough, it was all in my head. So, like, she was like, yeah, so it's basically like all just the way that you're thinking about things. It's the way that you're processing things. Um,
What?
and I was like, man, like I I can't do it anymore. Like she gave me a book called Mindset. No. I don't remember what it was. We stole it though. Like I still have it. I was like, oopsie, I still have this. It was like
Shout out.
change your brain or like something. Like I still have the book. I could find it if I
Oh,
want to,
switch
but
on your brain.
that's it. Thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the book that she gave me. And the book was fantastic. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think some mental health things can be, reversed by like changing your thoughts and exercise and but it's the same thing with certain disabilities. Like you have like I don't want to say endometriosis can be like cured through diet and exercise, but it can be improved through diet and exercise. Some mental health things can be improved through diet and exercise. Some physical disabilities can also be improved through diet and exercise. But that's basically what this book just kept saying in all different ways. It was like, change your diet, get rid of like sugars and carbs and like all these things, eat higher protein, higher fiber meals, and walk for an hour a day. And it's like, thank you. Where does that give me serotonin though? Because like that, I'm missing out on some serotonin here.
Yeah.
Like something's not right. Um,
Yeah.
so I was like, I get it. Like I was like, I get the appeal of the book if somebody's just a little bit sad here and there. Like I was like, I
Yes.
get it. Like some people have that, but if you're actually talking about like a mental health problem, like something that is consistent, sometimes that does require like CBT and, DBT or medication. So
Yeah.
let's like have that conversation. It's not that simple. It's not as simple as reading a book or going in the sunlight. Like we like that
Not at
doesn't
all.
always work.
No.
So
They sound like those bros on YouTube, like the bro influencers who
I
are like, "Antidepressants are stupid," and like, You just need to go to the gym, my guy. You're just fat. Like, that's why you're depressed all the time." Like, it frustrates me because I've seen a lot of that. In fact, my favorite podcast, I had a bro guy on there talking about how, like, he just went off about some bullshit. This guy was like 24 and he's like, "I could teach you things." The host of the podcast is almost 40. Like, he's like, Dude, you can't teach me shit because whatever." Anyway,
wait till your
tangent.
brain is
But
fully
nevertheless,
developed and then talk your shit.
yeah. But that's the bullshit. They're like, "Oh, well, you don't need medication. Medication is bad for you. Just go." And some of them were like, "Oh, go drink a beer and go to the gym." Motherfucker, do you not realize that there's such thing as like a chemical imbalance? There's things in your brain like, sure, like I tried going for walks. I try to be out. I have a dog. I take my dog out for walks. I take my kids outside. I'm constantly outside, constantly being active. And I've, had recently changed the way that our diet was in the house. You
Mhm.
can do all of those things. You can change your environment all you want to, but if you still have it inside of you, obviously you need something else. And to shame people out of these options is actually dangerous. Like,
Yeah.
I used to get so angry thinking about the fact that one of the leaders, she is the daughter to John and Barbara. She married across line. She's one of the first things I heard her say in a night owl was that this business helped her get off of antidepressants. Why the fuck would you say that to a group of people? Why? Your personal decisions with your medication is your business. But somebody who could be fucking struggling on the inside, their antidepressants actually fucking help them. You're gonna now give them this false hope that they can live their life with this magical business. They don't need those pills. Next thing you know, they're taking off their medication. They're not taking it anymore. And they're gonna go into a further depression. But then they have to hide it now because
Mhm.
you guys don't believe in passing negative. You fucked up that person's life, whether you want to believe it or not.
You know, it's funny because you have like uh, the one thing that I get when it's like the business helped me with my depression is like I made money, so I'm no longer depressed. Like that's the only thing I can kind of think is like I now have money, so life doesn't suck as much. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, having money it, like totally has made a difference. The amount of money that I made when I was pregnant with my son versus my daughter is drastic and like I'm able to do more with my daughter based on the income that I have now. Um so making money does make a huge difference when you have postpartum
Totally.
depression.
Yeah.
But in order to like rebuild your brain and rebuild your mind, like you can't rely on yourself to do that. And you can't rely on people who
Right.
have never gone through it before. And
Yeah.
sometimes like I don't necessarily believe that medication is the first answer. I don't think that's the first thing that we should do. I think everybody agrees on that. Like there's other options. We should try a bunch of other things before we go on meds, but eventually going on medication might be the right idea. And that's how I felt about like
Yeah.
being diagnosed with ADHD. Is I was like, is this debilitating to me? Is this something where I need to go on a stimulant and eventually like um just live on a stimulant for the rest of my life, because technically it is a disability. Be like, if I had a heart condition, would I be on heart medicine for the rest of my life? Yes, that's the right answer. um, but I don't believe that depression is necessarily a disability. I believe that it could be just a small moment in your life where you're experiencing um, a mental health battle. I don't believe depression should be forever. Like ADHD or like, being on the spectrum. I believe they're very different disorders. But um, during that little blip, sometimes going on a SSRI helps you no longer go on an SSRI, because then you have the motivation to get out of bed, and you have the
Yeah.
motivation to do your dishes, and you have the motivation to go out and make more money, and you have the motivation to do
Yeah.
these things, so you no longer need the SSRI. Like it's not
Yeah.
having depression or anxiety, and learning how to manage those things is not necessarily the same thing as having a disability. I feel like I might have blurred those lines there, and I don't
No,
mean
no, you're good.
to.
It can
um,
be confusing, when you're
yeah,
talking about these kinds of topics. You guys just saw me go through a fucking shit show. Sorry. I had to fix my whole situation here, but I was listening, I promise. No, but it's true. It's like a means to an end. You
yeah,
can get yourself out of these bouts of depression. Now, if you have clinical chronic depression, obviously that's different. That is a
yeah,
disability. ADHD and autism, again, those are disabilities. Those are things that quite literally can never go away. And, when you talk about medication, even, it's like, would you deny a diabetic insulin?
yeah,
No. So it's like denying somebody the ability to even take medication is insane. But also, you're right. I do think that every person is different, and you can explore all of the different
yeah,
options. You can
yeah,
say, okay, let's get a blood test. Am I iron deficient? Okay, let me take some iron. Let's see if this helps. Like, you can go through whatever myriad of things that you need to do to finally come to
yeah,
the conclusion of what's going to work for you. But you have that choice and you have those options.
yeah,
Worldwide tells you it's in your head. You need to go build your business. And once you build your business, you'll be happy. And let me tell you, I totally agree. Making more money really does help stress.
yeah,
However, there are a lot of other things that can make a person depressed. You could have all the money in the world
yeah,
and still be really fucking depressed just because that's what's going on in your noggin at that point. That doesn't mean you're always going to be depressed.
yeah,
That means that you're going through a season, right? Unless you obviously you have chronic conditions. That's different. But when we're talking about bouts of depression, that's different, or bouts of anxiety, like things
yeah,
that you yourself know that it is a season and it's allowed
yeah,
to be a season.
yeah,
And that was another thing too. You're not allowed to feel. You're not allowed to sit there and be sad. You can't ever be like, I'm sad. Like, I'm really fucking sad today. You can't have a mental health day in
yeah,
worldwide. Like, we talk so heavily about mental health in our home. Like, if my child is going through it and he needs a mental health day, he's gonna get a mental health day. He's
yeah.
allowed to have a mental health day.
It's
Kids
like
go through
being
shit.
sick. It's being sick.
It is,
Yeah,
and you're allowed to take a break. And
yeah,
Worldwide was like, "Nah, nah, you're not building your business. You're just being lazy." No, I'm sitting at home crying because maybe I was triggered today, or it was just a rough day. My kid didn't sleep. I didn't sleep for whatever various reason. That wasn't
yeah,
a thing.
yeah. No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Like, I think that a lot of our simple problems in life can be solved with money. And I mean that in the sense of like when things get really tough, like you have family members who pass away or you end up with a
Yeah.
terminal illness or something, like money can't solve that. You know,
Oh, yeah,
there's a lot of
totally.
things that like money can only solve some simple service level issues. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, those are the mundane day-to-day things that we kind of deal with, which is,
I hope
yeah,
so. It
yeah,
does. You don't
yeah,
have to worry about, like, where's your money gonna come for food? Like,
yeah.
when we were in Worldwide, I know that for me, like, I struggled. Like,
Mhm.
I had to literally, like, figure out how we were gonna buy groceries because I was in Worldwide. I had the money, but I didn't have the money. The money was never mine, it
Wow.
was always theirs,
Yeah,
and I never knew that I was going into their pockets. I didn't know that they were making fucking money on the memberships the way that they were, and I knew the fucking struggle, and let me tell you, being able to go to the store and sure, there's a budget, but knowing I can buy groceries tomorrow if I need them is very nice. I tell you that, like, that taking away that stress is nice. Knowing that my
yeah.
gas bill is paid or my phone bill is paid, knowing that my bills
Mhm.
don't have to go to collections or that I'm not getting bill collector calls
Yeah,
is really, really nice. Like, that does take off a lot of stress. I
yeah,
won't lie
sure.
about that. It is really nice. But Worldwide puts too much emphasis on the financial aspect and never anything else. You're not allowed to just be you, and your brain's not allowed to be different. If your
Yeah,
brain doesn't function like the upline, you're just lazy. Like,
yeah.
it's your fault.
Yeah, but like I said before this, like if you're neurodivergent, which I was growing up and my husband was growing up, and like Fisher suffers with this more than I do at this point, is like you have this like notion that you are bad and you are
Yeah.
lazy because you know you're different, you know you're built differently. And you can go your whole life without being diagnosed, or if you notice something is different in your child, you can go without them being diagnosed and they know they're different. You know you're different, but
Absolutely.
instead of knowing it's your disability and knowing that like something is clinically wrong with you, you just think
Yeah.
you're lazy and you're weird and you're weak and you can't do these things. Like, go get diagnosed, go get your child diagnosed, and give yourself a fucking break because you
Yeah.
deserve it. Like, we all deserve it.
Yeah.
This society, the way that things operate, is not only operating on a male's hormone cycle, it's operating on a neurotypical male's hormone cycle. Like, the way that the world works is
Yeah.
not designed for everybody. And
No.
Worldwide took that idea and said, we know that the system doesn't work. We're going to create something different, and
Yeah.
created the exact fucking same thing.
Yeah. And
Where
that's
you
and
rely
that's
on money and you have to like be nice to people and like do all these things. They just took it and they took it and they went, we don't want to do it this way. We want to do it this way, even though it's the
right.
same fucking thing.
Right. And even when it comes to neurodivergence, they don't that doesn't exist there. That's not a thing. Unless it
Yeah.
comes to their benefit, like the club owner and his wife, all of a sudden they care about neurodivergence because it hit their household, which I'm sure it has hit a lot of other people who don't want to talk about it.
Oh, no
And
one was diagnosed. That was the best part is he was
really?
diagnosed with ADHD, and Rihanna would go up and talk about how that was just the school system, and that was what the school system was trying to do is put him in this little box.
What?
And yeah, they were just trying to put him in this box because he had ADHD because he wasn't behaving the way that other students were behaving. And then they had their daughter, their second born, and she was a nut. And so they were like, we don't know how to contain her. Like, she's crazy. And I was like, it's hereditary, is what
It
it
sounds like she's got
is.
the ADHD.
Yeah, like, go get her diagnosed. Because this is real. Like, it's not just like a crazy kid kind of thing, but this is like a boomer mindset. They're just,
Yeah.
your grandpa that collected stamps. Yeah, he was neurotypical, very normal
Ah,
to collect like.
you can't sit in his seat either. Like,
Yeah, like, he had a very strict
neurotypical
seat,
things.
he collected stamps, like, he wore the same thing to church every Sunday and ate the same meal every single night. That is normal. Like, they've been around for a long time, it's just society is now realizing just how broad we are, and they're going, "Everybody
Yeah.
has ADHD," and it's like, "No, not everybody, it's just the people you hang out with." because we attract each
Yes.
other.
Yes, yeah. I was thinking recently about who I actually know that's neurotypical, and let me
I
tell you, like, I
don't
don't get
fucking
along
know
with the
anyone.
neurotypicals.
No.
My significant other is neurotypical, we discovered that. He does not have ADHD. He is neurotypical, he's not at all neurodivergent, we've discovered this
Does he get,
because
like,
me
mad at you? Because, like, I heard that that's a thing, like, they can get, like, frustrated the way that, like, we operate because they're just so, like,
oh,
"Oh,
he I think he's
this is
used to it by now. Because
yeah."
like, I'm like I I function better when I have to stress clean. Like, that is when I get everything done, when I fucking have to, which I'm
Nice.
trying to get better at that. I'm learning how to compartmentalize, but it's
Yeah.
like somebody's coming to my house in like an hour, I have to fucking get this shit done. Like, I'm like overloaded. He's like, "You could have done that like a little bit." I don't fucking know how to do that, sir. Okay? I don't know how to fucking do that.
If
Let
you
me
want
stress clean all at
advice,
once.
if there's anybody that listens to this podcast that is neurodivergent, shout out. Like, but also the one thing that helped me get really good at cleaning as a neurodivergent, like when you're talking about compartmentalizing, is
Yeah.
realizing that things just exist in cycles. Things don't have to exist in absolutes, which is one of the things that got me really good at laundry, which was like something that was spicy is it was like I felt like laundry had to be completed all the time or it wasn't done. So I wouldn't
Yes.
do it. But it was like I was like, I'll never be done laundry. Laundry just keeps going. But then it's like I look at clothing and I go, this is the cycle that this piece of clothing is just living in right now. This piece of clothing is living in my dryer, not folded right now, but sometimes it can live in my dirty laundry hamper as like a dirty piece of clothing because that's the way that it
Yeah.
exists. Dishes can also exist in like a dirty pattern, or they can exist piling up in my dish like sink, or they can
Yeah.
pile up in my dishwasher. Like things just exist in cycles. They don't have to be absolutes. And that actually helped me so much with cleaning. I've gotten so good at cleaning. I don't have piles of laundry anywhere, and I have two kids now. Like I was like I've gotten like super good at it because I've like just changed my mindset around it. Just based on like how I get it. But like saying it exists in cycles might not work for everybody. Like, you know what I
Okay, I'm
mean? But
trying to
like
compute that.
yeah, but like as soon as somebody was like that doesn't have to exist as that exact thing that you're thinking it exists as, I was like, okay, I get it. I'm going to start doing it that way.
Yeah, no
But yeah,
joke. That's I mean, hey, I'm gonna try to make it make sense, but it's it's true. Like some of us just don't function like that. Like my stepmom is like the like and she's the epitome of neurotypical. Like she can function on planners. She does to-do lists. She like does not have the same challenges that somebody with ADHD
yeah,
does. And it's always like fascinating to me to look at neurotypicals and be like, like, how do you do it? And now
yeah,
that I'm on Adderall and I love it, and
yeah,
I now like when it's like it's done now. It's worn off a long time ago. But right now, when I'm on it, I can make these things happen, and I didn't
yeah,
realize that this is how normal people
yeah,
function. And worldwide, that was never a discussion. There was never any
yeah,
even possibility that your children could be neurodivergent. And we
yeah,
had this conversation earlier a little bit where it's like when you have a child and you know that neurodivergence exists, you can kind of start to take a look at what's the possibilities for you. Like, for example, my family member works in special education, and there was constantly conversations of, okay, if your child doesn't meet x milestone, here are the resources available to you.
mhm,
And with worldwide, that's not a thing. If you're like, for example, I can't even imagine what my life would be like in worldwide and having an autistic child. My child quite literally needs the exact same schedule every single day, and if
mhm,
he doesn't, there are consequences for that. He will feel distressed if his schedule is not the exact same, right? And with worldwide, your schedule is never the same. You constantly have to be out of the
no,
house. You
yeah,
constantly have to be going to board plans and major functions and
yeah,
rallies and
yeah,
all of the things. I could not do that. We barely leave the house because I'm going to be honest, and anybody who has children on the spectrum might understand, but outings can be very challenging.
mm,
The idea of even going somewhere is exhausting because I'm like, okay, we have to make sure that this outing has all of these different things, and we can have all of these things like a comfort item. We can have like, we'll carry him on our back sometimes because walking can be hard. He'll be
Mhm.
elope or whatever various things happen with children with
Yeah.
autism. And we have to make sure that he has his headphones, but his headphones can even be too much. So not
Mhm.
only do we have to worry about the headphones being too much for a while, then when he takes them off, what is the sound going to be like? Like there's everything when it comes to planning going on an
Yeah.
outing. And with worldwide, that was never a discussion. I never knew that there was even a possibility that my child could be autistic. I never saw it around me. Now, no, I don't. I have family members that have
Yeah.
certain like mental health disabilities or they have developmental disabilities. I recognize that now. I didn't know that when I was younger. Um, but and worldwide, it was you never talk about it. It was like taboo. There's your
Yeah.
child is fine. They're just trying like you said Rihanna was talking about, "Oh, it's just the school system's just trying to tell you that your kid is a problem." If your child and I obviously with Canada it's a little different, but in the
Mhm.
US, if your child has the what they consider a negative label, if your child has the diagnosis, the amount of resources available to you is astronomical, obviously depending on where you live. But there's IEPs, there's 504 plans, like, your child is protected. Your child has resources. Like, not having the
Mhm.
diagnosis, even considering it, you're limiting your child. You're basically saying, like, "Oh, my child's fine," but your child
Yeah.
might need something different.
But
And when you're
again, yeah,
talking
like,
about
this is, like, trying to get into the whole, like, they know they're different, so don't make them feel shameful that they're different. They should know they have a
exactly.
disability, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. And now being postpartum, when I was postpartum with my youngest, ADHD was always in the back of my mind as a fear. And now being out, I really wish I could have looked at things differently when I was postpartum.
Mhm.
Like the idea of my youngest being hyperactive like my oldest was scary to me because
Yeah.
the hyperactivity didn't have any answer. I knew deep down it was ADHD, but they would always say, "Oh, he's not. Like, he's just a kid. All boys are like that." Like,
They're just
it's not just a
busy.
boy. God,
Yeah.
I felt yes. Yes. Oh, they're busy boys. Boys will be
Mhm.
boys. I fucking
Yeah.
hate that. It's 2024. We don't say shit like that anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But either way, if I could go back and do my postpartum all over again, I wouldn't be afraid of ADHD as a
Yeah.
possibility. I wouldn't be afraid of having conversations with people who, as because postpartum isn't just immediately after your child is born. Postpartum goes on for, however long it's after you have a kid. I feel like
I
you're
don't
always
think it
postpartum,
like,
but
I talked to my midwife about this, and she was like, "I've never felt like I wasn't postpartum." And she's like, "And I had my
it's
last
true.
child 14 years ago." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, that's just kind of the way it goes. You'll never be prepartum." I don't know if that's the right
Never
word.
again.
But you'll
Yeah, you'll
never
never
be
be
that way.
before, baby.
Your body's different, the way that you feel is different. You'll never you can mourn that pre-pregnancy body. You can mourn
Yeah.
all of that. Like that doesn't exist anymore. Um, so you'll always be postpartum. It's
Right.
always gonna be there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking about when my son like missed his first milestone postpartum, I don't think I would be as afraid as I was
Mhm.
because and this is just me also advocating for parents of neurodivergent kids, like the failing the milestone, it's just your child is functioning differently. It's not missing a milestone. Your child's milestone is where they're at, you
Yeah.
know. But I get why milestones exist is because we need to know, because neurotypical kids meet X milestone, and
Yeah.
obviously those milestones that are missed cause concern and create this whole navigation system. So I get why they exist, but it can be scary. And the idea of your child is maybe a year old or two, like 18 months. Like my child was 18 months old and I was still what I felt very postpartum, very much like I just had this child. He still feels so brand new to me. And now my child's not baby babbling. My child doesn't talk. I'm so grateful that I didn't have to go to my upline and be like, my son's not talking and see what they say. Oh, well, he'll get there. All kids get there on
Yeah.
their own time. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, because some neurodivergent
Yeah,
kids don't have the ability, or it's not that they lack the ability to communicate, their communication looks different. They might
yeah,
need a communication tool to be able to communicate their needs. Their sounds might be their way of communication, but it might not look the same way as your kids does. So for you to tell me that it's fine and that I should ignore it is not the right answer either.
no.
It's
Talk to
scary.
your doctor. Like everything that you're kind of concerned about anything, like talk to your doctor. Like
Yeah.
Google it. Like you can Google it. Google's a pretty good resource. There's a ton of fucking shit on there. So like
Yeah.
Google it first and then like if Google's like can't really give you a definitive answer, also talk to your
Yeah.
pediatrician. Like those like like there's certain things where it's like my mom was telling me recently, like she's like, I took you to the hospital for baby acne. It's like if you would
That's
have had
cute.
Google, like you would have known it was just baby acne. But like there's certain things you can Google that like will tell you like, hey, if my child's not talking by 2 years old, is this something that I should be worrying about? And it's like Google can give you kind of a gist of an answer of like yes or no. Like maybe like, oh, it depends. Like, are they making this noise? Are they doing this? Like you can kind of get that like on your own, but always go to your doctor about it to like
Yeah.
in the end, like the doctor should be the person that you go to. It shouldn't be your upline. It shouldn't be the internet, but like, like it's to go to one person, like I remember like even might not be the best comparison, but Googling Love and Respect. I was like, is this a good book? And it was like, no. And I
Right.
was
I
like,
mean, that's a good
really?
example though, because you sought perspective elsewhere for the first
Yeah.
time. And for the first time you
Yeah.
were seeing a whole different perspective, like, fuck, they exist. Different perspectives exist.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that asking somebody else, don't just listen to what your upline says. That's what
Yeah.
they want you to do, but that's how they keep you indoctrinated. That's how they keep you under their control. You have to go ask other people. Now, if you're joining this organization and you're being told, like, you go to your upline for everything, don't fucking listen. If anybody
No.
ever in your life tells you to only go to them, you have a problem, and
Okay,
that person needs to be dealt with accordingly.
you need to like I don't know if just shout out to anybody that can't read gang very well. Um the book 1984, a very classic novel that everybody should read. It's also
Yes.
available on podcasts like Apple Podcast. I listened to the entirety of the book like last year or something for the first time, and I listened to it, and it's like it's pretty accurate no matter like kind of what era or like what agenda you're kind of trying to fit it into. But if you're trying to fit it into your worldwide agenda, it like kind of fits where it's like you're only supposed to listen to the like big brother and you're only supposed to listen to the government trying to tell you like what you're supposed to be doing. Um I yeah, again, highly recommend the book. I think your social studies teacher, your histories teacher is probably recommending the book also.
Good old George Orwell, Animal
Yeah.
Farm.
Yeah, Animal Farm
Yeah.
as well, yeah. Um but yeah, always like this kind of mindset of like listening to one leader has been around for a very long time. It never really ends well. I think we all know that dictatorship has always been like the worst kind of thing that we can end up in. So, um,
Yeah,
always
totally.
keep a new perspective. And
Yeah.
okay, this is something that our leadership taught us. I don't know if yours did, but like if Rianne couldn't come to like a conclusion with me, I would get passed up to Mary. And
Yeah.
then yeah, like it was like a continuous thing. Not a thing. Like funnily enough,
No, it's
like I remember talking to Rianne about moving out with Fisher and being like, we're gonna move out together. And she was like, well, you're not married. I was like, I don't okay. Doesn't matter. We ended up waiting till marriage to live together because that's what they told us to do. Um, but I remember being like, I still don't agree with you. And she was like, that's too bad. And I was like, you're gonna pass me to marry, or are you just gonna say that's too bad?
That's frustrating. It's also the same
So,
regurgitated shit, which is interesting. They're like, "Let me go talk to my upline." Like, they're all gonna give the same fucking answer. She's gonna be
yeah,
like, "Well, Hope wanted to do this." "Oh, well, our values don't say that." Well, then I'm just gonna tell her the same thing, but I'm a bigger pin level, so she's going to be intimidated and listen to me.
yeah,
That's all that it is, which is crazy to me. Crazy that they did this. It's insane. It's
yeah,
insane, and it's frustrating because nowadays we we're still traumatized, you guys. Like, I don't know if you guys have if you guys haven't been a part of this organization or something similar, like, we are we literally could talk about this 24/7, 7 days a week because we are
yeah,
never devoid of stories that are going to be relevant. But the sad part is we have to look back on these things and think about it. We do have these comparisons of like, fuck, like postpartum. When I had my first child, like I said, my circumstances were very different, but I still had the time. I still had time. I didn't feel obligated to bounce back to do what? To fuck up my life even more, give them more of my money. That's all that I fucking did. And my youngest child, I always have the mom guilt of being like, well, fuck, I'm sorry that I did this. Like, I always look at my son, and he was a little baby, at that point, but still, there's a piece of him and a piece of me that did not connect because of worldwide. And it was just one
mm,
day's worth, or it was multiple days that I could have been home with him feeling no guilt at all,
yeah,
that I robbed from him, that they robbed from me and from you and
yeah.
anybody else.
Hell yeah,
It's
man. I
sad.
don't know. I don't have anything else to say. It's good.
No, you're good. I am just so grateful for your willingness to come on here and be vulnerable because these topics
Always.
they can be challenging to talk about, can be triggering. So we really appreciate your time.
I've been listening
Um,
to everybody else's like podcast too. Like it's fantastic to hear like being one of the OGs like on this like platform. It's like it's really always good to hear other people talk too because I'm like I I don't want to brag, but I feel like it helped open a door for other people to like talk too. So I'm always okay with being vulnerable. Anytime that somebody's like, you're talking about this helped me. I'm like, good, because like it's not easy to talk about this stuff, and I'm glad that me being able to open up also helped you open up because it's not easy to talk
yeah.
to anybody.
Totally. You're like the OG. Like,
Yeah.
everybody, like, you were the first person I didn't know
Yeah.
who, like, reached out and was on the podcast. Like, everybody else that I had known them, and, you were really the catalyst to other people feeling the, like,
I'm so
comfort to be
glad.
able to come here. So we're
Yeah.
grateful for you. You and Fisher really came here and not only made a name for yourselves, but like you said, you guys really kind of opened the door for other people to be like, "Oh shit, like not
Yeah.
only did these people go through it, it's okay to talk about it." And I
Yeah.
know sometimes it can be hard because a lot of people are scared when they come here. They're scared to want to talk because cults like Worldwide have made them
Yeah.
afraid to talk.
Yeah.
And people are afraid. Maybe it's afraid of getting sued. Maybe it's afraid of their old upline coming to them. Maybe it's
Yeah.
afraid of just their upline hearing their perspective that their upline didn't even know they had.
But
Like,
even coming on
scary.
anonymously, like that shit helps a lot too. Like even recently Rose, I reached out to them on Instagram and I was like, dude, like I've been following you since 2020 because you helped me. When I
Yes.
initially quit, I followed that WWDB under um right
Yeah.
when I quit, and then I like looked at all that stuff, and that was some of the statistical stuff that helped me get out. And like hearing them on this podcast, I was like, this is super cool. I feel like I'm talking to like listening to a celebrity right now. Like I'm like, this is
Yeah.
so awesome.
Oh my
Um,
God, I know.
but like everybody's stories has been like fantastic and everybody offers a new perspective. And talking about postpartum is obviously like one of the harder things because like there's potential like my kids are gonna hear this one day. I don't know if they're gonna want to. Um, but
Yeah.
there's so being vulnerable like this might not be like it's hard. It's hard to talk about because I don't know. The internet is permanent. So I don't
It
know
is.
what's going on here. So it's
Well, the good news is that if your child ever hears this in the future, it's going to be a positive mark on the world as opposed to, I mean, people make mistakes and they have things
yeah,
online that maybe maybe they later on regret. I mean, I know for sure I do. Um,
yeah.
but
So
we can all kind of look at this as such a fantastic journey. Like I even think that just having you on here, like every time you come on, I feel like the perspective just gets deeper and deeper. Like we get to
yeah.
see so much of a bigger spectrum. And I don't think you've even anticipated coming on again after the first time.
No. When you asked me on like the second time, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I think we're friends.
Oh,
I
no,
was
we're
like,
definitely
so yeah, no, I always have fun on here. Like that's why I was like I like when I reached out to you and I was like, I want to talk about postpartum. And I was like, I know this is your platform, but like I feel like this is a good opportunity because it's very different this time.
yeah,
You're like, hell yeah,
totally.
hell yeah.
I'm all about it. If anybody has ideas, just please let me know. Like, obviously we want to make sure it makes sense, but we can
Yeah.
always make it make sense. I don't think anybody's ever come to me with like a bad idea.
Unless they're fucking weird.
It was, yeah, or you support things that we don't support here, which is the
Yeah.
right wing agenda. Sorry, we don't do that here. Everybody is welcome here. Okay. That's one thing that I really want to make clear. And I tried to make it clear in our last like big discussion panel, the first one, where I really just want people to know that this platform is not for a select group of people.
Right.
Everybody is welcome here. And I make sure that the people I have on and the platforms that I support are people who are allies to every community possible.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put that out there. There might be other creators that my values don't align with theirs. And that's because I want to protect
Yeah.
all of my protected classes, including the LGBTQ community. I have a large progressive audience. I'm not trying to limit anybody because
Yeah.
the sad thing is that abuse, right? Trauma, MLMs, they do not discriminate. Okay. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation, your gender, whatever you are, you can be pulled into a cult, unfortunately. Like, and it has pulled a myriad of people. And
Yeah.
that's why I don't want to limit my platform because
Yeah.
there's just so many different types of abuse. There's so many different types of traumas. MLMs can quite literally get anybody. I feel like we've seen so
Mhm.
many different types of people come on here and talk, which further proves that limiting the audience would only hinder the message as opposed to helping it.
Absolutely. Hell yeah, man.
So, with that being said, you guys, if you guys want to be like Hope and you guys want to come on here, come back. If you are a previous guest, please just email me, DANI at exesandtpodcast.com. You are still welcome to DM me on Instagram at exesandt.podcast. We're trying to get TikTok back up and going. That is the same handle. You guys can find me on YouTube now, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else that podcasts are heard. So thank you again so much, Hope, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Peace out.